Hello and welcome to my studio. In this video I'm going to show you how I made this picture. There are numerous techniques that can bring out details in the most delicate of subjects. This image was backlit with a point light source to enhance the texture of the slate and give contrast to the translucent parts of the subject. An omnidirectional light was then used to partially fill the shadows. And in this video I'm going to show you exactly how I did it. Okay, so we'll start with the subject. This is Physalis, or Chinese gooseberry, and I'm using this as a subject because it is quite delicate and can be lit to make it look quite nice. Okay, so I've placed that on a piece of slate, and the idea is that I'm going to backlight this so I can bring out the detail in the slate and also in the subject. Okay, so I'm going to be using a full-frame digital SLR with a 24-70 zoom lens on the front of it and a flash sync trigger on the top. Now, the flash sync trigger can also control the energy in the studio heads I'll be using. The camera is tethered into Capture One software, so it's easy to see the results as we go along. Okay. So if I just pop this on this tripod, we'll just initially line up the shot. So the first thing I'm going to do is just zoom that all the way to the 70mm end on the lens, and then just check the focus, like so. Okay, so with that done, next thing to do would be to turn the camera on, like so, and take a test image just with the house lights, just to make sure that we don't get any contamination. So now I've turned the camera on, you can see the settings that I have on the camera. So it's in full manual mode, 1/250th of a second for the shutter speed, that's the flash sync speed for that camera, ISO 100, and at the moment I'm using an aperture of f8. So with those settings I'll just grab an image, and that should be dark, which it is. Okay, so that just confirms that we're not getting any contamination from the house lights. Right, so the first thing to do then is to set up the backlight, as I mentioned earlier. That's what I'm going to be using to predominantly light this subject. So for that I'm going to use a Profoto B1x. This is a 500 joule battery-powered flash head. I'm just going to place this about 1 meter and a bit away from the subject. That should be far enough to give it the view of a point light source. There we are. We'll just point that at the subject, like so. Okay, so with that set, I'll just turn on the flash sync trigger here, and I'll just select that head and just turn it on. There we go. So with that set to an arbitrary energy level, I'll just grab an image and see what we get. Okay, so you can see in this capture that the exposure is not bad. I think the angle of the light is possibly a little too high. I can tell that because these are illuminated, but they could be stronger. So what I'm going to do is actually lower the light ever so slightly. So we'll just take this down a bit to about here. You do have to be a little careful, because if I make it too low, then what will happen is we'll end up with uncontrollable flare. Right, so just with that in that position, we'll just grab another image. Right, so that's starting to get there. It's a slight improvement. If I go back to what we had before, you can see now that the shadows are getting longer and the detail is getting brighter. But I think we can go a bit further. So I'm just going to take this down a little further, like this, just to concentrate the light a little, I'll just move this reflector all the way to the front, like so. That should just concentrate the beam a bit. Just make sure it's all lined up, and we'll grab another image and see what we get this time. So this is considerably brighter than what we had before. That is what we had before. This is what we've got now. The shadows are long, and this is much more like the sort of thing that I want. We are just getting some flare, which you can just see at the top of the image here, so it's degrading the contrast in the background a little. So that's the next thing to address, to get rid of that flare. And that's fairly easy. All I'm going to use is a flag, so just a piece of card, this time on a lab stand, and I'm just going to place this in here somewhere, about there, and I'll just look through the viewfinder and just set the height. There we are. So that's looking about right. Let's grab an image and see if it's doing the job. There we are, that's got rid of it. So this is what we had before. You can see the flare at the top of the picture here. And this is what we've got now. Okay, so the next thing I'd like to do is just control the amount of light which is at the very back of the slate. So this is this area here really. And to do that, what I'm going to do is just use another piece of card as a flag at the back here. So I'll just place this card just on a piece of wood, just like this, and that should throw a bit of a shadow just along the very back of the slate, if I've got it in the right position. So let's just try that. There we are, that's coming along. You can see the edge now. That's what we had before. That's what we've got now. So that's causing this horizon line. Good. So far so good then. But the other thing about this image so far is that the area at the front here is generally a bit dark. I mean, you could leave it like that, but what I'm going to do is just use an omnidirectional light to fill in those shadows. Okay, so for that, I'm going to use another B1x. Now the idea of setting up a omnidirectional light is that it's coming from everywhere and in effect nowhere at the same time. And the way you do that is use the actual space that you're in. Now if you're in a very small studio, it actually works better than a big one such as this. But it should still work in here anyway. So what I'm going to do is just set this so it's pointing away from the subject. So from the subject's point of view, it won't be able to see the face of this head at all. Okay, so with that there, I'll just turn that on, like so. And again, just at an arbitrary energy level, and just to get an idea, I'm actually going to turn off the flash at the back there and just have this one firing. So I'll just turn that other head off, like so. And we'll grab an image and just see what we get. Okay, and you can see from that we're getting a little bit of fill-in. Not quite enough yet, so I need to just increase the energy in this head. So I'll take it up by one stop at a time. So we'll just add one stop of energy to that head and just grab that again. Right, so now we're starting to fill that in a bit. I'll go another stop and see what happens. Okay, so now that's having quite a large effect. That might be too much. I'll turn the other head on again, and we'll just evaluate that. So this time they'll both fire. There we are. So if I now go back to what we had before, which was that, and now we have that. That's possibly a little too much. I think it wants to be somewhere in between. I'll just take half a stop off that. We'll just grab that again. Good. Now, just for completeness, what I'll do is just grab a final image without the fill-in so that I can then manipulate the two images a little later in post-production. So I'll just turn this off. So select the head, turn that one off. Just grab that. There we are. So now we have a pair. We have this one and this one. So now I've got those two captured, what I can do is go into Photoshop and do the bare minimum of post-production. So here we are in Photoshop, and I've loaded up the two images that we captured earlier. So this is the one with no fill, and this is the one with the omnidirectional fill in it. So the first thing I want to do is just make a stack of these two files. So I'll just go to File, come down to Scripts, load files into stack, ask it to add the open files, and I'll also ask it to attempt to automatically align, because I think it will do that quite well on this. They should be aligned up anyway, because everything was shot on a tripod. There we go. And just to check that they are in line, what I can do is go to the top image, and I'll just drop the opacity to about 50%, like so. Yeah, that looks fine. Okay. So having checked they're all in line, the next thing I want to do is just add a layer mask to this layer. So I'll just click on the icon here, which will do that. And I'm just going to invert that, like so. That will stop all of this image, and I can then just paint through, so wherever I paint on the mask in white will show that particular part of the image. So make sure that white is selected as the foreground color. Pick a brush. I'm going to pick quite a large brush with a fairly soft edge. There we go. It's a bit too big. There we are. Okay, so just starting on here, I'm just going to click that through a little just to fill that area out, and just to bring the fruit through on here, like so. It's very, very controllable, this method. So this is what we have now, and that's what we had before. So I think that's coming along quite nicely. Okay, now the other thing that I might want to do is just address this area of the fruit itself. It's got a few blemishes on it. If I just zoom in, here you can see some marks within the fruit. So what I'm going to do, just select that image on the layer, and I'm going to go to the healing brush, and we'll just check the size of that. It's about right, I think, at the moment. I might make it a little smaller. There we are. And just hold down the Alt key to pick the sample point. About there. There we are. And the same for this bit. What I'll do is just pick a different sample point. Maybe make the brush a bit bigger. That. And just take those bits out. There we are. That's better. Okay, so with those bits done, I'll just zoom back out again. There. That's getting there, I think. I'm just going to pick a crop next. Now, as usual, I'm using a specific ratio because this will be destined for the video. But you could pick something which works for your particular image. Just move that up in the frame ever so slightly, something like that. Just click on OK. And now finally, I just want to take down the very edges of the image, and I'm just going to add another layer to do that, and literally paint with black. So I'll make sure that black is selected as the foreground colour. Find a paintbrush, bring this up to a reasonable size, make sure it's very soft. And I'm literally just going to paint out the corners a little like that. There we are. Just concentrates the image a bit. I think that looks very nice. And there we have it. So a delightful little photograph which illustrates the way that you can use backlighting technique to good effect. And I think that little addition of some fill light at the front there has really lifted the shadows of the image. All in all, a very pleasant image. Okay. I hope you liked watching how I made that picture, and if you like watching these sort of things, do click on the other images as they appear, and don't forget to subscribe. Oh, and hit the like button. Thank you very much for watching.